It seems the federal government is nearing an agreement on a new national minimum wage, as President Bola Tinubu has invited organized labor, including the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress, to a meeting at the Villa today. A source within the Labour leadership, speaking anonymously, disclosed that President Tinubu is keen to resolve the ongoing discussions on the minimum wage and has invited the joint union president to the meeting. The president is expected to make a decision on the 62,000 naira proposal from the government and private sector, as well as the 250,000 naira demand from organized labor. This meeting comes about a month after President Tinubu announced in his Democracy Day speech on June 12 that an executive bill on the new national minimum wage for workers would soon be sent to the National Assembly for passage. To discuss this a bit further, I'm joined by Labour Lawyer Ireoluwa Oguntuwase. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening.
All right, it's been meetings upon meetings to resolve this minimum wage issue, but the government has been accused of foot dragging. How sincere has the government been in handling this matter, and do you think this latest invitation for discussion would yield any tangible result?
Okay, so if we trace the trajectory of this matter, we'll recall that it's been on for some time. Now, talking about sincerity, I think the issue of sincerity, we can say that the government is showing seriousness now, considering the fact that the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria himself has, at his own instance, at his own discretion, invite all parties together so that we can find a way of resolving this. Now, one thing is sure, this matter will be resolved. The issue of the new minimum wage will be passed. The issue that we're having, or the controversy, is the amount that will be designated as the new minimum wage, which they are trying to resolve now. Now, in considering how much, they are likely to arrive at as the new minimum wage, let's also look at, the parties, in my own opinion, that are serving as obstacle to this. Now, for the state governors, they had come out to say that, see, it's not possible for us to pay the sum of 62,000 naira. That that the organized private sector, are even proposing. How feasible is this? Because one thing I see when people say something is not possible is to present, verifiable evidence, to analyze it and show how impossible this is, which the state governors, they are yet to do. Now, we need to
just not to hold brief for the governors. Sorry to interject. Not to hold brief for the governors, but we've had cases of analysts like yourself who come up and say that there are states in this country that will not be and are not even paying the 30,000 naira minimum wage. So expectations that they would even be able to comply with the 62,000 naira is unimaginable to some of them. So realistically, where does that leave the conversation?
Well, where this leaves the conversation is that let's consider the amount, they share federal allocation. And I believe that since the removal of subsidy, and according to what the federal government had even said, the allocation that they give to the state governors had increased. So the state governors should be able to come out and they should be able to be sincere, in the amount they are collecting. And we should not also rule out the fact that there has been much distrust between the federal government and the people, and the state governors and the people. It was all before us that the news of our next governor of a state that paid, in advance of his child came up. And if we look at that state, they are also facing the issue of minimum wage. In fact, most of the civil servants in that state, they are here to collect salary under the supposition that the state doesn't have money, where their ex-governor had paid in advance a substantial amount, allegedly for the school fees of his child. So where does that leave the people? That exactly is the distrust that I'm talking about. So if the state governors are saying not pay, or some states have not paid, it may not necessarily be that they've not paid because they don't have money. It may necessarily be that they've not paid because there are much wastages. Is when the administration of that governor, when it expires or when it finishes, that will be hearing a lot of stories. So with all due respect to what you've said, I may not necessarily want to your views that some states have not paid because probably they are impoverished. Now, the way this country is structured, all the state has resources. What are the state governors doing in order to generate much resources that will increase the revenue base in their respective states? We practice a federal system of government that makes the state government, as a federating unit, to also be extremely independent. How are they achieving of the federal system of government that we're practicing? I think those are the issues that should be brought to the front burner, and not the fact that the state governments or the state governors cannot pay.
Ireoluwa, just to quickly clarify that those views are not mine. They are presented by analysts that I have spoken to over time, and that's why I made reference to that. But you did present your view as well. Some people think, though, that this invitation by the presidency is a ploy yet again to buy the labor union leaders over, and they seem to have lost faith in the labor unions. What do you think Nigerians would they be surprised after this meeting? Would Labour stand firm? Or do you think there will be a resumption of industrial action?
That's a very intelligent question. Now, in relation to the attitude of Labour, when the federal government calls them, we need to consider something. Labour is proposing 250,000, and the organized private sectors and the state governors are proposing between 60 to 62,000. Now, that's a wide gap or a wide disparity between 250,000 and 62,000, at least over 100%. So whether Labour has compromised their position or not will now depend on what they've agreed. Now, one thing is sure, they cannot agree less than 60,000. And another thing is sure, that there is a very high level of inflation, there is a very high level of poverty, hunger in the states. And Labour seemingly, by their constitution, they're meant to represent the people. So for me, I don't see Labour conceding to 62,000. I see them conceding to an amount above probably 100,000. So if I'm seeing Labour conceding to 62,000, then, and my opinion is subjective, Labour may have compromised their position. But even in this situation, I don't see Labour compromising their position here, because they seem to be doing quite well. And the federal government would also, the federal government are willing, in my view, to also step up the demand. The issue that we're going to have is the state government and the organized private sector.
I mean, the best we can do.
I believe that if Labour can further press their demands to 100,000, I believe it's something that is achievable.
I mean, the best we can do is just make analysis of possible outcome. Until the meeting is done, we wouldn't know what the outcome is. We'll probably come back to you again. Thanks for speaking with us.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good.